introduction to one of my favorite people on earth, Mr. Stephen Oliver, who is with the Advisor Marketing Podcast. Now, Stephen is a true maverick, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Not only in our business, but I have to tell you, his clients universally love him, and they grow at rates that they wouldn't believe it's possible. Now, on this podcast, in each episode, Stephen is joined by various members of his team or special guests to share insider secrets to rapid growth and high net profits in your financial advisory practice. So I just want you to know you're in for a wild ride, new information, and a lot of exciting new future because of Stephen Oliver.
Okay, so what we want to talk about, and a lot of different marketing activities really depend upon you positioning yourself as the authority or the expert on what you do. And it's, again, going back to that weeds thing, is if you're just the same as everybody else, then why should they choose you? What you want to be
That
is
song
you want to
from
be
that song from Weeds you're talking
exactly,
about.
exactly.
If people
Little
didn't hear
Houses.
that, that Little Houses song, where all the houses in the neighborhood, it's part of the Weeds, the TV show Weeds, where all the houses in the neighborhoods, it's talking about them being all the same. My neighborhood in Arizona, there's a bunch of neighborhoods where all the houses are exactly the same. They're all stucco and have tile roofs, and you don't want to be like that. You don't want to be the same as all the other guys with the same letters behind their name, CFP or whatever the letters are, because that doesn't distinguish you between you and anybody else. You want
Well, it doesn't mean you don't want those things. I mean,
you
more the
have to
better,
have,
right?
Yeah,
So,
and you have to have those. More the better, and you want to be an expert. You want to be good at what you do. It's not that isn't important, but you also want to be noticed as an expert in a lot of different ways. So we're going to talk about the specific ways that you can be an expert and give you some real content on that today.
Yeah, and we'll kind of mix and match this with what probably should be separate topics a little bit, but one way to be seen as the expert, I was having this conversation the other day, is to be seen in media as the expert. So we do a lot of work with people in getting publicity and PR and one thing or another, which is, can be a complete separate topic. But the important thing about most of that stuff, let's say that your local newspaper does an article about you, or that you're the contributor for a specific topic, or you're...
I was going to write up there.
Go ahead. Or you get a spot on TV as a commentator or something like that. Well, the important part usually about that is not how much business comes flooding in from the media, but it's repurposing it, right? So all of a sudden you have...
You call that public relations or...
Yeah. But you'd have a section of your website with all the clips from when you've been on TV, or you'd have all the newspaper clippings and scanned, and you have a package you give to prospective clients. You have all the content on the website. But that's one way you build authority, is if CBS or the Wall Street Journal or Kiplinger's or the local Fox affiliate, whatever it is, if they're seeking out your expert on your expertise, I mean, not if it's a spot on fly fishing, but if they're seeking out your expertise on the topic, then obviously you're the expert they thought to seek out. Now,
yeah, and it's not hard to get that. We can show you ways to get that, and that's going to be another topic we go into depth on. Yeah. But it's pretty easy to get some PR, and then when
well, hell, there's 500,000 podcasters. I mean, there are 1.5 million, but there's 500,000 desperate for somebody on this topic to come in and talk on their podcast, for God's sake. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's not hard to do this. What happens is people just don't think they can, or they don't spend the time to do it. So when a prospective client comes to your office, or maybe a suspect, what we've talked about before, where they're not a client yet and they're maybe thinking about getting an advisor, and you're the one that's been on the local TV, or had an article written about them, or you've written an article and it's been published, and you're giving them a packet of that information. Oh, well, you must actually know what you're talking about, because you're not just the guy with the letters behind your name. You've also got this information. You've been on a lot of sources. And as Steve's saying, that we've repurposed this in tons of other ways. You can have it in on your website and packages and all kinds of other ways that you can use this information. We can turn it into audio and video. and then print information. Have it scanned in.
Well, you'll appreciate this. So I was having a conversation with otherwise fairly successful advisor the other day, Zoom or phone, I forget which, probably Zoom. And I always have the TV on in my office, right? And in this case, it was tuned to Fox Business. And so I'm sitting there explaining that they should be, a celebrityizing getting on TV one thing or another. And he goes, oh, why would any TV station want to have a financial advisor? While he's saying that, they had two different financial advisors they were talking to. I think this was Charles Payne or something. Two different financial advisors, which of course he's in that market as well. Two different financial advisors they were talking, and paying attention now. They had like 6 different people during the day in different shows, and that's national, right? I mean, well, we had one of my mentors ended up on CNN on the CNN what's the breaking news, the 30-minute show, everywhere in the world. Every one that came on for 24 hours. But usually you're not hitting that much of a home run.
Yeah, it might be hard to get on CNN for 24 hours, but
Fisher, I mean, he was the longest running columnist ever for Forbes, right? So he was in Forbes for I don't know how many years, and before he got benched for a while from his own company, strangely enough, is he was on news shows constantly being interviewed. But local is easy, right? What happens with local is once you get into their, whatever their equivalent is of a Rolodex nowadays, once you get into the producer's contact file as a topic expert, then anytime something like that comes up in the news, right? So what we know is going to be in the news now through the end of the year is, the new stimulus bill, the new tax hikes, the new capital gains, all that stuff. They're all going to be desperate for an expert to come on and talk about how that's going to affect your retirement, how that's going to affect your savings.
And that stuff doesn't stay static. It changes all the time. So you've got lots of opportunities to talk to people about things. And what we're also talking about is being an expert in a narrow area.
Yeah.
So that gives you more specific things to talk about. If you were an expert at working with dentists, then you'd be wanting to be in their magazine, and then that's really even easier to get into. It might be
the trade magazines.
Yeah, there may be less interested in that in the local news, although they might be. But the trade magazine would be much more interested in having you talk to them.
Yeah. Well, even I live in Evergreen, Colorado, right up in the mountains, but there's at least 3 local magazines and little newspapers. Well, the lowest hanging fruit would be, they'd be overjoyed if I was giving them a column for every issue on this topic, right? Mm-hmm. But you make a good point. Once I decide that I want to be, like I've been trying to get Peter into the Porsche thing.
Yeah.
Well, he could be a columnist in their little local things. He could be a columnist in their national. He could be a columnist. I've already got the title for it. It's how to enjoy your toys and I forget what it was.
And live rich.
And
retire rich.
Yeah, exactly. But he could be a columnist for all of those stuff if I could get him to do it, because they'd love it, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody else is doing it. It's a completely, like the book Blue Ocean, it's a complete blue ocean strategy because nobody else is there vying for attention in that environment. And so that's one of the ways that you become an authority and an expert is you become the only one that's speaking to a narrow audience. And you get newspaper, magazines, TV, even online blogs, online podcasts, online shows.
Yeah. Well, then we ought to put.
Yeah, which is a 3-hour topic by
Right,
itself. But,
right, and we're going to go over each of these in detail in a separate segment so you get more meat. But online is another area that we want to make sure you're an authority.
Yeah.
One of those pieces would be reputation.
Right.
Making sure that this gets ignored all the time. Making sure you have reviews online, and those can be in all kinds of different platforms. Have reviews that you can have your current clients publish and even past clients publish. Well, they shouldn't be past clients if you're keeping them, but publish information about you and reviews on you. And you have to stimulate them to do that by letting them know where to go and what to do.
Well, we're fully aware that compliance wouldn't let you do it. The federal laws wouldn't let you do it until recently.
Right.
And so you've
And
got to
we got to help you do it the right way.
Yeah. But where I think it misses the point oftentimes is it's a big leap between somebody making an outrageous claim in the form of a testimonial versus somebody saying, I really trust this person and I've worked with them for 20 years, and if you're looking for this, I would recommend you talk to them. That's two ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're always building is that online reputation, offline reputation, a stack of references and referrals, and doing it in such a way that compliance officers and you're not going to get in trouble with anybody. But one of the strategies that we like the best is having your own book. And I was seeing I think it was Kitch's again, but a report they did a report on marketing with advisors that was pretty good. But one of the things it says is it listed, advisors' perceptions of things they had done that had worked. And like the least effective was it listed, having a book. Well, to me, even listing it on the list missed the point of what the book was, right? It's one thing for me to think, I'm going to write the best ever book on, retirement planning, and then put it on Amazon, or I'm going to go to a publisher and get it published. And everybody's going to,
right.
That's not what we're talking about.
Right. And hope that you get a bunch of sales.
Yeah.
And you're going to sell 10 million copies of the book.
Yeah, well, bestseller on nonfiction is 5,000.
Right.
And on a dry topic like this, where there's a few of them, there's a few people like Dave Ramsey or Oarsman, but they have a TV show. Right. So their TV show is driving traffic, which, by the way, you can do too, but that's a different topic. But the book is as a business card and as a lead magnet and as a pass along, right? And all those are different. But if I, have a new client that comes in, a new prospective client, and one of the first things I do is I give them my book, or give them 3 books, or maybe I give them, 3 reports, a book, and a package with all of our press coverage. Well, all of a sudden, that puts me in a different category than just the kind of average person who has alphabet soup behind their name of they do this, right? It builds that level of credibility. But what we use books for a lot is a Facebook ad, and here's your free book on this subject. And then when they raise their hand for the free book on this subject, they get educated at a higher level, and they get contacted, make an appointment, or they get nurtured forever, right? And then go ahead.
Well, in specifically about being the expert, I think when people are referring to a book not working, they're thinking about, did I sell a lot of books, or did books having it sitting on my counter, did somebody come in because I gave the book away? But if you're supposed to be the expert, and you literally are the guy
who wrote the book
on the topic.
And by the way, they don't go Amazon and figure out that there's 100 others on the same topic.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody's doing that. But then you are the expert. That makes you the expert. I mean, the phrase "they wrote the book on it" is a common phrase. So this puts you in a different category than anybody else. In addition to the multitude of ways you can use the book. Yeah.
Well, and again, a different topic. But as a referral strategy, one of the things one out of many systems to generate referrals is having pass-along tools, right? And one of the best ones is a book. And so it could be, a big, thick, general book, which is the less effective way. Or it could be a smaller, thinner, easy to put together, specific, topical. And in fact, you could have a series of 30-page books or 40-page books on separate specific topics: financial planning, estate planning, how to not run out of money in retirement, one thing or another. But then if each of your clients had, say, 5, that they can pass along to their friends. See, your current clients are, well, by the way, your current employees are almost always bad at the elevator pitch. It's, presenting what you do. And your clients are even worse. In fact, they probably are more likely to screw up, the sale than they give.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how many, well, you'll probably already know if you've asked your clients to tell their friends about you, or given them your business cards, or that just, you get every once in a while a referral. I mean,
and it feels desperate. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, but it feels, it sounds desperate if you ask them, for one thing. Giving them your book and saying, here's a book you can give to your friends if you like, and that's an authority sharing something with them, rather than, hey, would you please tell your friends about me? It comes from desperation. It's a completely different point of view. But the other piece of it is telling your clients to go pitch you is just not effective. They're going to suck at it. They're not going to be good at it at all. And as Steve's saying, even your employees suck at it. Yeah. If for any of you who have a staff and you're telling your staff to go out and beat the streets or tell their friends, or if you're wondering why they're not bringing all their friends in, even their parents or somebody that might actually have some money, why aren't those people coming in to be clients of yours? Well, because they're not very good at selling you. But if you gave them your book and said, give them a copy of this, and inside of it has some information on how to contact you, that's completely different.
Yeah. And but what you always want in a word I was looking for is positioning. Mm-hmm. And there's a great book. When I was first opening my own businesses, one of the first marketing books I read was called "Positioning: The Power for Your Mind," the battle for your mind. And an example they used was IBM releasing the PC. This is how dated it is, but the concept is exactly right. And what they talked about is they didn't try to say, this is compared to this and this and this and this and this, this is this, and whoever it was back then, Commodore is this, and so right? It was basically, this is the solution to your small business needs. This is the solution to, right? They didn't try to compare it with anybody else. It was just the solution, right? And they were positioning themselves as, now this is the thing, and all that other stuff, was hobbyist crap that until this came along. And you want to be thinking about positioning all the time. Somebody was asking me about, why wasn't I out talking to people at some event? I said, well, it's bad positioning. We want them coming to us, not we're out chasing them, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you want is you want to always look like, one, that you're really busy, two, that you're very selective, three, that you have a very high quality of clientele, and four, that you're the go-to expert in either a particular niche or on a particular topic or whatever it might be. And then you want to make sure everything that you do to surround that, whether it's you wrote special reports on different topics, you wrote books, a book or multiple books on specific topics, whether you're the go-to expert on TV, radio, newspaper, but you want to put all these pieces together so that you have that third-party endorsement as well of being the credible expert.
Yeah, and this isn't to say that we don't want you.
It's Lee Milt here, and I'm delighted to interrupt you today and let you know that I've been working with Stephen Oliver for 10 or 15 years now. He's a great guy. I love all the research that he does. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're enjoying the content on this podcast, then you really want to make time to visit advisorwealthmastery.com. And why should you do that? Well, because you're going to receive 2 of his great books and actually one of mine called Success is an Inside Job. You'll also get a lot of absolutely free material on growing your practice through effective marketing. So again, take the time to go to advisorwealthmastery.com.
You to be active in going out and getting clients.
No.
But if you're really active at getting clients, then they're going to feel like they're coming to you.
Yeah.
So it's ironically the better excuse me, the better I am at then giving my book to my clients, and then having them give the book to their friends or their maybe it's a client that I've had for a long time and they're 60 and they're giving them to their 45-year-old, or well, hopefully not older, 45, but 40-year-old kids that might be ready to put some of their money in investments. they then would, yeah, that's an active thing I'm doing, but then they'd come to me. So that's you've got to be active, so active that then the clients are coming to you.
Right.
So we're not saying we want to do things and then just sit back and wait for clients to come in at all. This is an active thing so that we're positioned in the right place so that they feel like they're coming to us.
Yeah. Well,
Well, and I'm sorry, one more
Go
thing
ahead,
I want
go
to mention on the book that I want to
Yeah.
not forget. For anybody listening, don't get scared about, oh, I'm not a writer. If you decide you want to be an expert by doing a book or really any of these things, what we would want to help you with is how to get it ghostwritten. Unless you've got a book already in the can, we'd want to help you with getting it ghostwritten so we get something done quickly that would be on your topic. And that's very, very easy to do and really cost effective.
Yeah. Well, for example, if you have an hour presentation you do, well, we can go transcribe that and transcribe it pretty well and then hand it to a writer who can take the written, the spoken word and turn it into something that's readable because they're a little different, right? And if you had 10 topics that you wanted it to cover, we could do an interview for 30 minutes or an hour on each topic. And then that gets transcribed, and then that can be handed off to somebody to clean it up, right? So the methodology for putting this stuff together is much simpler.
It's a lot easier than you think.
Yeah, we were talking to somebody about this, and they gave us back the outline for what they wanted to do, and it was like their magnum opus of their life story, right? Yeah. It's like, no, what we want is something topic specific that can be used as a business card. And then we want something topic specific, could be the same thing, that we can use as a reason to raise their hand, right?
Right. For your clients,
yeah.
for your target clients.
Yeah. So here's a LinkedIn ad, here's a free book on, here's the solving the C-suite dilemma for retirement planning. So, right, whatever it might be. I saw somebody very bright, I think this was Dan Caprell, and they did a retirement planning for pilots. Well, perfect, right? I mean, yeah, you're not gonna sell a jillion of them on Amazon, but if you went and did a live meeting at United Airlines, open to their pilots, and you did a live meeting for Southwest.
Or the Pilots Association.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
You became part of the association. You did their magazine, their newsletter. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you could utilize it, right? But it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. But that's the way you want to think about it is, how does it tie into a niche you want to do? And by the way, God, what's his name? He's a Dan Kennedy fulfillment guy, Patel, I think. Brilliantly, he had a marketing book, but same book, 5 of them, different titles and different cover on each one of them. All the content, with the exception of the introduction, was all the same, right? So, on that pilot thing, it could be, perfect retirement planning for pilots, and then it could be perfect retirement planning for firefighters, then it could be perfect retirement planning for police officers, then it could be perfect retirement planning, right? It could be perfect planning for Procter & Gamble employees, Vonage employees, Microsoft, whatever it could be.
Sure.
Same content, with maybe a chapter different, or maybe an introduction different.
Yeah, or there might be minor differences throughout the book. There's a lot of ways to approach this depending on who you want to be the expert for. I'm wondering if this is a good lead-in for podcasts.
Oh yeah, and that's a way you'll appreciate this. We had somebody who I forget how they phrased it, but they were upset that they'd gotten an email or a postcard. I forget which it was. And they said, no, this is unethical. This is interruption marketing, not permission marketing, and it should always be permission marketing. Well, number one, they didn't understand the difference between permission marketing, which was Seth Godin, is they didn't understand permission versus interruption. But number two is almost all marketing that historically has been done would be interruption marketing. You're watching the Super Bowl and the Fritos ad or the 7-Up ad or Sprite or Budweiser, whatever it is. ad comes on, right? That's interruption marketing. I'm not watching the Super Bowl. Well, maybe nowadays people do. I do, but
you shouldn't be watching
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Normally people are watching it for the game,
Yeah.
except for you.
yeah, exactly. Or they're on Facebook for the cat videos or the political argument. They're
Right,
not there
right.
to see your ad. So almost all new prospects in most media come to you first because it's interruption marketing, right? And then
They're watching for a different purpose,
Right.
but then they see your ad.
Yeah. Which is, again, why I like Facebook versus pay-per-click, because in Facebook, you're getting to them before they've had the thought. And in pay-per-click, you're competing with everybody else who does the same thing, right? You can make the argument the other direction as well. But almost all leads come from interruption marketing, and then you follow up with permission marketing because they've raised their hand and said. See, podcasting, that's where I was going with that, is different, right? Because with a podcast, a YouTube channel, all the different iterations of this now, is they're out looking for information on the subject. And then they find you, right? Or they've raised their hand from something else looking for information, and part of your drip follow-up education can be feeding them out your podcast, feeding them out your video. So see, it goes both ways, right? But one way to build, and I forget his name, I would say, somebody whose podcast I was listening to who does marketing stuff, but he's in San Diego, and he created the San Diego Investment Plan. I forget the name, but a podcast aimed at people in San Diego, right? Well, it's brilliant, right? So if somebody's looking for local stuff, they're likely to find him, and then all of his stuff. We used to do, that was what we did with the infomercial, is everything we went out was watch our TV show on Saturday morning,
Right.
which again brings us to being a radio host, a TV host.
Right, but podcasts, just so everybody's clear on what podcasts are and are not, when we talk to people about it, they get confused. It's not just audio, it can be video and audio.
Yeah.
So, and podcasts is growing exponentially. People listen to them in their car, they're listening to them on their tablet, they're listening to them or watching them or listening to them on their tablet. Hopefully not watching them in their car, watching them on their computer screen. So this is very easy to do. I mean, if you're using Zoom now, you can hit, like a lot of people, pretty much everybody, or your phone, you can just hit record. And you can record audio and or video. You don't have to have a fancy setup. Although you can have a fancy setup and have a fancy background and do all kinds of things. It's very, very easy to do. And speak on topics that, again, already you'd be the expert. If you've written a book, you can kind of just talk about your book or the topics in your book, or vice versa. If you want to write a book, you can start talking about topics.
10 podcasts, transcribe them.
And then they turn, exactly, and then they turn to your book. And then this can get fed back into your online content. This can be content that you talk about.
Transcript becomes a
blog posts and everything. So this, all this stuff can work together. Plus, if you've got content that is turns into public relations, which could be press releases, all kinds of other stuff. But it could be stuff that you're going to talk to the radio station or TV station or the newspaper. Your podcast, you being a podcaster, can help you get connected here. So this can be very valuable in a lot of different ways.
And honestly, having a YouTube channel and podcasts, I don't differentiate them very much. It's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah, you feed this in.
Yeah.
You feed the video into YouTube.
Yeah.
These are different things, though. They're not differentiated, but you do your podcast typically. It's real important to understand this is a small, we're going to do podcasts as a separate topic.
Yeah.
But this should be on your website so that it pushes onto all the other platforms, and then you'd also feed your video to YouTube.
Well, and I heard it described as the number one search engine if I'm going to go buy something, detergent, whatever, is Amazon. The number one search engine for I want to go research something is Google, and the number one search engine if I want to go be entertained is YouTube. We were just talking about the Young Frankenstein bloopers reel.
Right.
That's on YouTube. But staying on the topic of podcasts, there's 25 or 30 different directories.
Mm-hmm.
The gorilla, the 800-pound gorillas are Spotify, Apple, Google, and
Amazon is a big one.
Amazon,
too.
yeah. But what happens is somebody goes and searches for a topic, and various podcasts come up, and you've got to figure out making sure you position the title and everything so you show up in the search results. but it's a way to build an audience. And the thing I find about podcasts, it's a strange phenomenon to me now, but I have met a number of people who I became familiar with first through listening to their podcast. And it's really interesting because you build affinity with their personality, you build affinity with who they are. It's almost like when you meet them, you already like them, or I guess it could be the opposite. You don't. But in this case, it was people who I liked their podcast, and then I met them after I had listened to their podcast. And when I met them, it was already like I already knew them. Right?
Well, and the difference between you and somebody else who has a podcast. Like we have a podcast that we do for advisors and in other niches that we work with, and you're totally differentiated between you and the other guys who don't.
Yeah,
it's like you've got your own TV show almost at this point. So you hear the big names, and this isn't so that you make money with a podcast.
No, you're not going to be selling advertising.
Right, and the same with the book. This isn't so you sell books and be a bestseller. If that somehow happened, good for you, but that's not your objective here. Your objective is to be the expert.
Yeah.
What's some other things that we want to make sure we cover, because we're right on time here.
Yeah.
These are really 4 big things about being an expert. I think we may want to just really quick. We're going to do events at another.
What we were talking about before is doing other people's events.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
being a featured speaker.
Yeah. Using the halo effect. So if I'm the pilot one is a good example.
Right.
So if I get invited to American Airlines
annual training, annual convention.
Yeah, and I'm the expert at whatever the topic is, their retirement plan. Well, that makes me the expert.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm a big expert. So whoever they're working with, whatever advisor they're working with on whatever they're doing, if they get my information, or guess what, maybe they get their book, or they get a link to my podcast, or they get a link to my website so they can see the content that helps them out with their retirement planning. Maybe that's free. They get a free copy of my book.
Wow. And truth be told, the advantage of going to other people's events and or hosting your own is that most people, when they see you up on stage on a microphone, the number one fear in the United States,
speaking in public.
Yeah, speaking in public, it's not dying in
Death
fire.
is number 4.
Yeah, it's speaking in public. So just the fact that you're up there and halfway confident and halfway articulate, all of a sudden they put you on a pedestal.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So it's a marvelous way, again, like I was describing podcasts, where all of a sudden they put you a notch above. And to summarize it, because we're at our timeline here, is be constantly thinking about ways that, one, you can position yourself as being, nobody ever went to the guru at the bottom of the mountain, right?
Yep.
You want to be the guru at the top of the mountain, which the perception should be you're a little bit unattainable, it's a little hard to get to you, you're really busy. And again, I don't mean that in a rude way, but all of the things that you put in the way that you handle people, I'll give you a stupid example, but if I have my receptionist talking to a client on the phone, I don't want her to say, "Oh yeah, he's available anytime, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, let me know." Oh no, it's oh my goodness, he's really busy this week because he's speaking at such and such, and he's got a couple of TV interviews. But I could squeeze you in. We had a cancellation on Thursday morning.
Even if you are totally free.
Yeah.
Even if you're starting your practice out
empty.
And you're totally free, it needs to sound like you're not.
Yeah. Dan Kennedy had a story about Nito Quabain. And, when he had nothing going on, he would publish his calendar. And there were all these big slots of everything he was doing, but of course it didn't really exist. He just wanted to show people that, well, if I'm going to speak for you, I'm available on this time or this time, right? If we're going to have a meeting, I could squeeze you in on this time. You want to be the expert that you're booked for, 24 months in advance, but I can squeeze you in, right?
Yeah.
That's the way you want the perception. But this other stuff is, having the book positions yourself as an expert and gives you tools for other purposes. Having the special reports that you put out, having the reel of all the TV shows you've shown up on, and by the way, it's pretty easy to get a bunch of them because once you become their expert,
Yeah.
But the radio shows you've been on, You know, I mean, they can all be, posted on your website. It can be a package you give people. But all of a sudden you start building this level of authority that adds more and more and more credibility to what you're saying. And the Influence Science in Practice, a great book if you haven't read it.
Yeah, everybody needs that book.
You and I
Yeah.
have studied it.
Yeah.
But there's a great story about it's a personal trainer, a therapist, physical therapist, and they'd be referred by a doctor. And in one case, they'd come in and they're just in the room and they do their plan. In the other case, they had all their certifications, their awards, their diplomas, their certifications, and it was in the room where they brought the patient, and the patient would get a little bit of sense of the authority of the person. The level of compliance on the plan, I forget what the number was, but it's like a 300% improvement in the compliance, because they went from viewing this as like the teenage personal trainer down at 24 Hour Fitness,
Right.
to this is a medical professional who's really teaching me how to do what it is. That's what you do. All of the positioning in your office, the positioning, what they're seeing, the material you're giving, all should position yourself as that expert.
Yeah, and this is so important when you're dealing with people's money.
Yeah.
And you want to be differentiated from not just the average person, not just from a guy on a phone at Charles Schwab, but from everybody else in the industry, and be specialized. This is also being specialized enough in exactly what they need and who they are, even if you're specialized in many areas, that you're going to be the guy at the top of the mountain.
Right. Well, and on that note, we better call it a day, and we'll go hit some related topics as we go here. But any questions at all? We're always happy to answer your questions, but hopefully that gives you some thoughts to think about there.
All right.